in the following, Saskia de Craen, leading the work package on coaching for Shell, will present how to coach truck drivers towards safer driving behavior. Welcome, Saskia.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, my name is Saskia de Craen. I'm a human factors expert in road safety, and in this project, like Annalena said, I worked on the coaching measures for Shell on behalf of Shell. And saying that, I would like to have a warm welcome for Terry Lillington, who is joining us from Australia. It's getting quite late there, I understand. Terry worked with our project from the beginning, but she had to retire a year ago, so we haven't seen her in quite some time, and I'm very happy that you can join us once again, Terry. Yeah, next slide, please. So this part of the project was a collaboration of the partners that you can see on the left side of the MeBeSafe consortium, but we couldn't have done this project without the partners outside of the consortium, that is the transport companies Litra and Bergy from Norway and the UK, which cooperated with us in providing drivers who were willing to test our coaching system. So we were very happy with that. And the two software companies, SmopGen and SoftVision, who programmed the app for us, because near me, any of the partners could do the programming ourselves. So we were very happy to have them on board. Next slide, please. In my presentation, I will introduce an app that combines online and offline coaching. And with online coaching, we mean an app that records driving behavior and provides feedback to the drivers. Offline coaching refers to face-to-face coaching with peers, because we believe that professional drivers are actually the best experts. So peers can do the best coaching. And this coaching part is also supported by the app. I will explain why we are using an app for this to measure driving behavior instead of in-vehicle monitoring systems, and how our goal is to empower the driver. Our colleague from Cranfield University, Anders af Wåhlberg, will then explain the keys to successful coaching that were actually the foundation of his coaching system. I will share some results of the field trial and end with conclusion, and I believe the discussion will be saved for the breakout sessions. Yes, next slide, please. So our coaching approach and the DriveMate app that we developed, well, it only does three things. That it records driving behavior, then it interprets and visualizes the data, and it supports coaching. And I will go into these three aspects of the system right now. So before I go into that, sorry, what is different from other driver monitoring systems is that we have the purpose to empower the driver. So the driver is the owner of the data that the app collects. He is actually the only one who gets access to this data. So it's not a monitoring system where we are trying to pick out the bad behaving drivers and punishing him or her. No, the only purpose of collecting the data is for the driver himself. And that's also why we use an app instead of in-vehicle monitoring systems, because this IVMS is very complicated, because you need software to collect the data and to pull out the statistics. And this is often sent to the managers and not to the drivers himself. So we thought an app has many advantages. For example, we could also combine it with other sources of data. As you will see in the next slides, that we are actually using Google Maps to, I wasn't by there, but that's okay. We are using Google Maps to get more information about the location of certain events. So an app is easy to use. You can simply plug it in, put it in a cradle in the cabin, and you're off to go. And it's cheap. So this provides better opportunities for rollout. Every company can start using the app tomorrow without expensive technical systems. Next, please. So recording behavior, we aimed for a clean screen with minimum interaction, because of course, while you're driving, we don't want to get the attention of the driver. We want the attention on the roads, not on our app. So it's basically you get inside your truck, you press start drive, and you're good to go. And the only information that is shown is the duration of the drive. So nothing fancy there. If you want, you could record a message or log that location if you think something interesting happened there. We want the app to be easy to use. As I said, the data is property of the drivers, and all the analysis were done anonymously. And we even have the possibility, if a driver wants out, we can delete all of his data from the beginning of the project. Yes, next one, please. So for the visualizing of the data, the app basically collects 3 variables. It collects harsh braking, harsh acceleration, and from those measurements, it calculates a smoothness of driving. And this is what we feed back to the drivers. So we calculate a smoothness score, and as you can see on the Google Maps, we can even show exactly where the app recorded a harsh brake or a harsh acceleration. And by clicking on that location, we can pull up a street view so a driver can exactly see what happened during the harsh brake and what location it happened. For now, this is all heavy goods vehicle specific. You can imagine that harsh braking with a big truck is quite different from harsh braking with a personal car, but those systems can be changed, so it can be adapted to personal cars as well. And in our app currently, the drivers are compared with their colleagues. And this makes sure that the comparison is more fair, because you can imagine that driving in Norway on the countryside is much different from driving in a more populated United Kingdom. And it's much more common to have harsh brakes when there's more population. So by comparing between colleagues from your own company, we even that out a little bit. Next slide, please. So the DriveMate app gives you back feedback and insight. So personal statistics are shown where you are compared with your performance a previous week and are compared with your colleagues. The app also includes a survey function that I will explain next, and it supports peer-to-peer coaching. Yeah, maybe go to the survey function. Next slide, please. So we want to give drivers a little bit more insight into their driving competencies and driving behavior, because if we're simply reporting on harsh brakes, but never explain why we believe it's too many harsh brakes, it's harder to learn something from a driver. So that's why we incorporated 6 surveys with specific road safety topics. And every once in a while, the app shows this survey, and drivers can take it if they want. And the topics are about speeding, dangerous overtaking, close following, unsafe driving, distraction or fatigue. And if the survey calculates that a driver perhaps lacks awareness or competence, this specific topic is then suggested for a coaching session. So the app suggests maybe when you meet with your peer, you can talk about this topic because your answers might be a little bit different from your colleague. And next one, please. So a core function of this app is that it prompts a coaching session. So every 2 weeks, a driver gets a notification to please contact a peer, book a room, and have a meeting. But this meeting can be very low profile. We don't mean anything more than having a cup of coffee during a 30-minute break. And during this coaching session, they can discuss whatever they want. If they want to talk about personal stuff, because that's what's on their mind, that is fine. But of course, the app gives suggestions to discuss road safety topics, for example, from the survey, or to discuss, you can share and compare the statistics that the app is showing you. So we would like the drivers, of course, to talk about road safety. And the app has a clear distinction between an onboarding period and a coaching period. And when a driver first starts using the app, the onboarding period starts, and during this period, no personal statistics are shown. So basically, no feedback is shown from driving, but there are 18 onboarding sessions. They appear every 2 days, in which the purpose of the whole coaching system and the use of the app is explained to the driver. So in this first start period, they get acquainted with receiving coaching and how to perform coaching. And after all onboarding sessions are completed, then the coaching phase starts, and the trip statistics are shown, and drivers are asked on a regular basis to meet with a peer and have a coaching sessions. And every once in a while, even a supervisor meeting is suggested, so a driver can talk to his supervisor and talk if everything is still going okay. I think yes. Anders, are you there? This is your slide, I think. Great.
Okay, right. Thank you, Saskia. Hello, Terry. Okay, successful coaching. Yes. There's very little research on coaching, really, although it's very popular these days. And the standard coaching setup is you have a professional coach who is to help you improve your performance, often within a company setting of some kind. And often this person is not really an expert on the subject, but a more sort of generalist who tries to bring out thought patterns and things like that from the subject he's helping. Now, we wanted to use coaching, but give it a bit more power. We tried to set up a situation where we would use more psychological mechanisms than in the standard coaching setup. So we would use behavior feedback, which is the data from the app, which Saskia has told you about. We would build a long-term intervention, because most coaching is usually short-term, let's say a few weeks, a few months possibly, but this was supposed to be a long-term relationship. It's also the basis of a personal relation between two people, two professionals. And in this situation, you can get expert advice, you can discuss problems of your work with someone who's really knowledgeable. And that's really difficult to find, like driving instructors who are experts on driving a heavy goods vehicle. So a peer coaching approach gives you that kind of expert. Also, we apply what you can call peer pressure or social pressure, because you have to meet up with this colleague and you have to show something, you have to discuss something about safe driving. And that kind of situation tends to influence us to try to show our best, to our best side. And that should influence behavior, especially when you get the feedback. So you can actually show that, yes, my values are slightly better than yours, actually. And finally, we also use behavior change techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy, which has been proven to be very effective. So we have lots of different psychological mechanisms built into this peer-to-peer coaching approach. I think that's all. Back to you, Saskia.
Let me click on my mic again. I think the next slide is about a field test that we conducted. Yes. After the app was programmed and we pilot tested the first versions of the app, it was time for the larger field trial. And we worked with participants from Litra in Norway, and 13 drivers agreed to participate in our project. And with Birchie UK, 20 drivers agreed. And in late February, beginning March of this year, we organized some kickoff meetings with all of these drivers, and we explained them the purpose of the project. We gave them instruction on coaching. Anders came along with us. You can see him there in the picture. And we provided support to install the app. So we installed the app on the drivers' phones. And after this kickoff meeting, they were good to go and started recording trips. So next slide, please. So the way that the app was set up, with the distinction between an onboarding period and a coaching period, but actually was worked out perfectly for our field trial design, because in the beginning we don't show any feedback. You could call that the pre-intervention phase, where driver behavior is recorded but no feedback is shown. And the second period, where coaching starts, it can be considered the post-intervention phase. So any improvement in driving behavior during the coaching period could be allocated to the feedback and the peer-to-peer coaching. So this was all theory, but then, like all tests in the real world, nothing goes as you plan it, and we definitely didn't plan a worldwide pandemic outbreak. So next slide, please. Right in February, March, it's when COVID really became serious in this part of the world. So that really affected our pre-intervention phase. For, on the one hand, drivers were driving less because there was less business, but also even if they were driving and recording trips, you can imagine that the environment changed considerably. Without hardly any traffic on the roads, it was very easy for them to drive smoothly. So it immediately affected our study. And then, well, something else happened before we could reach the coaching period. Maybe next slide, please. Well, the project ended. Very unfortunate, but we had to stop collecting data. And because of some technical problems with the app, it malfunctioned once. Almost none of the drivers reached the coaching phase. So unfortunately, we don't have any results on coaching. So we have to stick with the theory for now. We do have some data, and I have 2 slides about that. Maybe next slide. This is the number of trips per week. We were very, very pleased with the enormous amount of data that the drivers collected for us. They kept using the app very consistently, but you can see the corona effect affecting the number of trips that were recorded. It's dropping, and you can even see the malfunction of the app in the week of June 11th, where no trips were recorded. This wasn't because of holidays for the drivers. This was the app stopped recording. And there is also, next slide, please. This is for you again, Anders, with the smooth scores.
Yes. Now, as we don't really have any data on coaching, this is an example what it could look like. And there's some interesting features which can be noted. For one thing, it was very difficult to recruit companies for this test at all. We should have had a big control group, but as it was, we had to use a sort of staggered design where some drivers would act as controls for the other drivers who had reached the coaching stage, because we were expecting seasonal changes. Quite big changes actually within a few months, and so we had to control for that in some way. Now this is a smooth score where lower values are better, and what you see are the results from the 2 companies, and it's from when we started them in early March to early June. For one thing, we can see there's a fair amount of variability, and one thing which is difficult to see because the scales are different in these 2 figures is that the average value for the UK drivers of Birchie were much higher, like 50% higher than the Norwegian values, which of course could be expected because the UK drivers drive in more congested areas. So there's one type of effect which make it almost impossible to compare two companies. But here we can also see two different effects. The virtue drivers are actually reducing their values, which could be expected due to the corona effect because there's less traffic, so they drive more smoothly. But the literal drivers, on the other hand, for some curious reason, their values increased. And that's the kind of thing that makes it so very important to have a good control group and to try to control statistically for differences in complexity of the driving environment. And that's something which we were planning to do, but unfortunately we could not reach that stage as the project ended. But I think this tiny amount of data is important anyway, because it shows this point, this problem which we have been discussing and working on so much, how to measure this behavior to bring out the true effect of coaching. And I think that's the biggest gain we can actually show in knowledge, this kind of seasonal and pandemic effect. Right, back to you, Saskia.
Thank you, Anders. I think I'm already going to my conclusions. In the next slide, please. Yes. So to wrap it up, we've developed a coaching scheme which aims to empower the driver. The transport companies and the drivers that we've talked to in the course of this project, they are all enthusiastic about this concept. It's a shame that we weren't able to test it, but it happens. The results that we did collect, they show that it's possible to collect meaningful data with a telephone, and I think that's important to know because it's way more cheap than IVMS systems. Yeah, due to technical and organizational problems, no results on behavioral change measured. But to leave this presentation on a positive note, we really hope that there will be a future for the DriveMate app. It will be considered for further development in digitalization projects within Shell. So there might be something there, and we are looking for funding to test at least the coaching scheme for intervention without the app. So maybe there's a future for the DriveMate coaching system. I think this was my last slide.
Yes, that's right. Thank you to both of you, Saskia and Anders.